No, ma'am, we can't hear you. Ma'am, I'll just start with the introduction.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
This is better?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So, Shweta, let me know when to begin. I'm ready.
Yes, ma'am, I'll just start
I
with
guess
the
we can.
introduction.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Aishwarya. I would like to welcome you all to yet another Aspire session. So, our topic for today's session is managing upwards as an employee, and it's a matter of privilege for me to introduce or to all of you our guest for the session, Ms. Harsha Vatnani, a proud alumna of TAPME from the batch of 2011 to 2013. After graduating from TAPME in 2013, ma'am joined Infosys as a recruitment specialist, after which she worked in various capacities like regional HR, benefits lead, and regional HR BP implementations. Currently, ma'am is the head of employee engagement and INC at Bosch and Siemens Home Appliances. In her current role, she's heading organization development, employee engagement, communication, corporate branding, and HR projects. Harsha ma'am is a global HR professional with 11 years of corporate experience in the US, Canada, Europe, and Asia. Her expertise lies in various domains like cost-effective human capital management, employee relations, disciplinary investigations, grievance handling, compliance management, workforce planning, recruitment, and the list goes on. On behalf of TAPME's Alumni Relations Committee and the Line Committee, ma'am, I welcome you to the Aspire 2020. We look forward to having a highly interactive and insightful session with you today. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. What a great introduction. This is a little bit got to know about myself as well because it's been so many years when I started the journey and looking back at what all experiences I've had, I'd like to share it with you all as well. So, how many people do we have here? Just a quick number, if anyone of you can share.
Yeah, 51 participants, ma'am.
51. Okay. All right. So I want to make it interactive, guys. So feel free to, unmute yourselves from time to time when I ask questions, and then we can have a conversation going. Because otherwise, it will just look like a lecture, and I don't want to be one of your professors coming in and talking on Sunday morning. Okay. So I admit that Sunday morning is not really the ideal situation to learn things like that. But let's just make it interactive and useful for all of us. Okay. I'll share my screen. The content. Let me know once you're able to see this. Yeah, the screen's visible?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So the topic for today is managing upwards as an employee. And this is, of course, the Aspire TAPME webinars. So I'm very privileged to so much for inviting me. Let's take this journey for the next 45 minutes or so to answer any questions that you have and express your views on this topic. And I'll leave about 15 minutes or so at the end to just free flow discussion about this topic as well. How many of you have experience in the past? How many of you worked in some companies for at least 1, 2, 3 years before joining your MBA? Folks, this is going to be very boring if you don't unmute and speak up.
I have, ma'am. I have 2 years of prior experience.
2 years, okay. Anybody else?
I have close to 3 years of experience.
3 years, okay. Anybody beats 3 years here?
Yeah, ma'am. I have work experience of 4 years.
4 years, okay. So 4 years is the top, I think, at the moment, right? When I joined TAPME, I also had a 4 years of experience. I worked in Infosys for about 2.5 years, then TCS and HCL. So I'm sure every one of you have worked somewhere, if not in organizations, with some projects, etc. So you know that there are bosses everywhere, right? We can't escape bosses. We will never be, even if we are the CEO of our organization, we'll still have the board of management to report into, or the shareholders to report into, right? So everywhere you go in all the projects that you take up, you will always have, number of bosses that you have to report to. So managing upwards is a topic which becomes very important, because it's not just important to manage your employees, because that's something you'll naturally do when you graduate, when you join in as managers in various organizations. You'll have employees reporting. So that is something that will come naturally to you because there's no other choice. But managing upwards is an important skill set. So let's see, what are your views on why this skill set is important. So just a quick request, if possible, keep your videos on so that I know that you're engaged and participating. If you have something very extraordinary to take care of it at home, then of course you can go off. But for the duration of the session, I would request you all to keep the videos on. A little bit about me. So I just wanted to, focus the last bit because the rest of it was covered by Shweta already. You know my career journey and all. I also, explored this side of me, and I wanted to, just put it across, because person is not just about careers. Person is about the personality that we have, the life that we have, right? So all of you will have your own hobbies, own interest, own personal areas, your families, your friends, etc. So that's a whole being that defines you, and not just your careers. So I'm a traveler at heart. I like to travel as much as possible. Of course, this year has been a very, very big dampener. We couldn't go anywhere, but if given a chance, I would have liked to travel. I like road trips, I like to take flights, etc. Harry Potter fan. I'm sure I can relate to some of you there, but this is a younger batch, so I don't know for sure. But anchor as well. So I like to anchor for events wherever possible. I'm a TV buff. If you give me, Netflix and Amazon Prime, I can just sit for hours and hours and watch some favorite TV series. I'm an airplane watcher, so I go outside, whenever there's an airplane sound coming in, and then I go to the balcony and just look up to the sky to watch airplanes. That's weird, I know, but that's how it is. A part-time painter. In college, I used to get more time, so definitely I would love to paint as and when. But these days, I kind of just tell myself that I don't have time, but it's probably just an excuse not to take up painting anymore. And in my personal life, I'm a sister, daughter, and wife as well. So that's the whole personality that I wanted to bring in, because each of us is not just defined by our careers. You also have something going on in your personal life. Why managing upwards is an important skill. Now, I want you to open up your cell phones, your browsers, whatever device you're using. Just go to menti.com, www.menti.com. Use this code 38538888 and answer this question. I want to understand your views on why this topic is important, why managing upwards is an important skill. If you don't know at all, you can just say, I don't know. But, I'm sure you've worked before. I'm sure you have had bosses before in different organizations. So just put in your comments and let's see what it brings up. Okay, so I'll give you another 45 seconds to do this. Yeah, everybody is attempting this. Okay, let's see what it looks like. Effectiveness. Okay, great. Why managing upwards is an important skill set. I think I pressed something here. Okay, let's see what it brings up. Experience learning to emerge as a leader. Awesome. Understand human relations. Promotion, very important. For growth, yes. Development, to align thoughts with your bosses, to learn and grow, to get more exposure. Money, okay, sure. If your boss is happy, then he or she will promote you for more money. Managing hierarchy, very important. Relationship, yes. Managing relationships is important. Negotiation, a very useful skill to have. Network, organization effectiveness, accelerated growth. What else is coming up? How many people have responded so far? 39. Okay, still about 10 to go, right? Peace of mind. Okay, sure, of course. If you don't manage your bosses, they might make life hell for you. So this is very important. Position, attitude, progression, innovation, recognition. Has everybody voted? I still have 39 people here. So do you want to take another 10 seconds to keep your insights in? So every one of you is mostly talking about appraisals, learning, growth, effectiveness, and getting money, getting your peace of mind. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation and see why managing upwards is very, very important and how can you do it. So I'll leave you with simple tips on how can you manage upwards, how can you manage different types of bosses, and feel free to share your views as well from whatever experiences you've had. Okay, so you all rightly pointed out, managing upwards is an important skill because whether you like it or not, every one of us will have the bosses, right? So what do you see here? It's just a corporate comic that you see. I'm sure you guys are fans of Dilbert. What do you see? You guys can unmute yourself because this is a slide where I'm not talking. Just go through this. It's a comic series and let me know what you see here. Guys? So I don't want to pick and choose. So just tell me what you think about this slide.
Right. So, my name is Rajarshi. From these three comic strips, we can see something that very generally happens in the corporate environment. A task is given to an employee without the boss making the expectations very clear to him. And then when the employee performs the task as per his own understanding, the boss is like, I do not understand what you have done. And hence the whole task has to be repeated again. This causes
so there's a
frustration.
mismatch, right?
Yeah, exactly, mismatch.
Yeah. All right. So your expectation is something different. Your boss's expectation is something different. When you deliver, you just have to rework all of it again. Somebody said in the chat that about risk, right? Why don't you speak up? Shweta, or who was it? I'm sorry, I didn't catch the name.
It's Shreya, I guess.
Shreya, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, you wanna put in your comment?
Shreya, I guess you're on mute. You're not audible. No.
No? Okay. We'll come back to Shreya.
I guess, yeah.
So Raj was right? There's an expectation mismatch here which is happening. And if you see the middle box here, there's also a element of what sort of type of bosses can you have. You can have a clueless boss, you can have a micromanager boss, you can have a boss who does over analysis, you can have a boss who's not good at decision making, so indecisiveness is coming out. So this is where you will realize that there are multiple types of bosses and they have multiple types of personality styles. So it's important to understand those styles before we start managing upwards. So let's look at different type of managers, leaders, and styles that they may have. And let me tell you in advance, this is not an exhaustive list. Okay? You may realize that you've worked with these kind of bosses. There might be another type of boss as well because personalities are very, very different. But this broadly covers all the styles or all the management styles that your bosses might have or my bosses might have. The first one is advancer. Somebody who's an advancer type of a boss gets things done, right? He's all about business, business, business. I want to do this, I want to do that, get this done. I want these sales targets. I want to make sure this process is implemented by the deadline and so on and so forth. And let me tell you here, I'm going to use he wherever, in most of the slides, but he doesn't mean a male boss only. I'm just using that as a terminology. But just wherever I'm talking about a boss, it could be a female boss, it could be a male boss. So advanced bosses show enthusiasm. They want to talk about things getting done, etc. How do you overcome these types of bosses? How do you survive this type of management leadership style, right? When they are all about business, 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 I want to get things done, you also show them, yes, you can get things done. So you complete a priority task, you ask them of their priorities, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What do you want to establish in this week? What do you want to establish in this month? What do you want to establish in this quarter? So once you have those priorities defined, once you've spoken to your bosses and understood that that's the way to go about it, then you can actually deliver on those priorities and say that, this is done, this is done. So it's like a checklist that you have to cover with these kind of bosses. They are not happy if you, go back at the end of the year and tell them that, I did so and so. But because by then you've actually lost the battle. So if it's all about business, then you get aligned to the business, understand the priorities, and speak about it from time to time. Deliver on the deadlines from time to time. The next one, the next boss type is probably somebody who's a cost conscious boss, right? Typically, some of you who will join in finance and controlling roles may report into CFO of the organization, or at least in some hierarchy of the CFO of the organization. So they are very, very cost conscious bosses, right? They play by the rules. They want to ensure that you are saving money in everything that you do, because that's their KRA or that's their KPI in the system, right? They have to save money. They have to ensure that there's cost profitability. The business is profitable. So how would they do that? By telling you no on every initiative that you do, or they will say that if you're putting a proposal of a budget for 10 lakhs, why can't you do it in 5 lakhs? So if you can find ways to save money, if you can probably talk to somebody who can do it for free for you, do an event for you for free. If you can find out automation where you can just involve somebody to automate a process so that you save on costs, you save on people costing, you don't want to hire so many people. So find out those ways of saving money. This will help you to align your thoughts with your cost conscious. Evaluator. Another type of boss is somebody who evaluates a lot, right? And I'm sure you would have experienced this in the past. Somebody who prefers quality over speed. Somebody who is more into details. So these kind of bosses will nitpick everything. And just as an example, one of my bosses that I've worked with, you'll work on a lot of presentations, right? So you deliver a presentation. I understand that I've done my best, and my boss says that I'm going to go and review it. He takes the Saturday, Sunday, goes back in home, and then changes everything. So he's not changing content, but he doesn't like the visual. He doesn't like the way it is looking. And he just goes back on a Saturday, Sunday, works for 4 hours on the presentation again to, come back to you and say, this is what I like, right? Because he's all about detailing. In presentations, you have these grid lines, if you have realized. So he wants everything in the grids. He wants everything to, come into a line. And of course, that's a good skill, good presentation to have. You want your bullets on the top of the lines, etc. So that kind of minutia, somebody who's too much into details is somebody who's an evaluator boss. So to deal with them, you have to slow down first of all. You have to understand their logic, what they want, and for the first time they'll give you feedback. Accept that feedback as something that you probably is something that you need to learn, right? So you accept that feedback and you work towards your methodology. You work out that this is what he wants, and I will stick to this. Even though you might sometimes feel that this is too much, right? Content should be more important. Why does he have to bother about bullets being here and there and all of that? But if that's what he wants, take that feedback for the first time. Spend that extra 15 minutes on creating presentations the way he likes, and then you deliver. This is the way to succeed with the bosses like that. Harmonizer. These are bosses which are typically nice kind of bosses, right? They build consensus. If you have a team of 10, you would want to hear from everyone. They also focus on people. They'll care about you. They'll actually show that they care about you. They would want to be liked as well. So if they have a comment, if they're saying something, if they crack a joke, they would want the team to laugh at it. If they don't, then they feel like I've done something wrong or my joke didn't fly well. So here, in these kind of environments, this is actually a good boss to have, but also somebody who's building consensus takes a lot of time to take decisions. So you can't look up to him to take decisions like that quickly. In this case, you have to provide feedback and also accept feedback. That's the only way to work with it. When I say provide feedback, you can actually tell them that this is the direction that we want to move in. If you want to take consensus, let's take voting. Let's not waste 45 minutes to an hour discussing about 10 different things and not getting anywhere. Because that's the risk that you have with these kind of bosses. In things where you have to take decisions quickly, you may not arrive at decisions because the boss will want to play nice to everyone in the team, right? She will not want to take that step as a leader and say that, this is what I want to do. The next one, and this is somebody who we all dread as a boss. If you get a micromanager boss, he or she can make your life hell, because micromanagers are typically those helicopter bosses that they'll stare at you, they'll pinpoint everything, they'll introduce themselves in every little thing that you do, and you don't have autonomy of doing things. And this is a natural element, right? Naturally, we want autonomy in everything that you do. If you don't get that autonomy, it just feels like somebody's hovering over you. Even parents, right? You would have come from different backgrounds when you went to colleges, as in when we grow up, our parents have a need to introduce themselves and everything. Of course, they're teaching us, but at some point when you're teenagers, when you're growing up, you will realize that you start sort of hating or getting irritated with these kind of things, right? Why are you telling me what to do? I know what to do. So that kind of feeling comes in, and it's got to be very, very strong in environments and workplaces as well. So micromanager bosses, how do you get over them, because they're going to be there? So you have to understand expectations. First of all, talk to them, communicate, understand their expectations, show dependability. So if you can show them dependability, and I'll tell you in the subsequent slide how do you build dependability, you can build a relationship with them. You can tell them, give tons of information. You anticipate their needs. You can ask them, or in a few months of time, in 3 months, 4 months that you've worked with them, you will understand that what do they need, right? If they want a status update, if you've realized that this is the way your boss works, then give them that status update even before they arrive in office, right? That's the way to avoid micromanagement, because otherwise they'll come back to your desk and they say, I want this, mujhe abhi chahiye. So if you want to avoid that, just give an information in advance and understand what they need, right? If they have to present something to their bosses, that might be the reason they're coming back to you, right? So if they have a board of presentation meet, just 15 days ahead or 5 days ahead, or even 1 hour ahead, give them that benefit, give them that information so that they feel comfortable and they don't have to manage and sit on your head to do things. The next type of boss is also very difficult, narcissistic, right? And this person can be all about him or herself. This person would want to think about me, and they would not care about other people, right? This is what I like, this is what I want, this is the presentation that I would like. I don't care what you like, right? I don't care what the skill set that you bring to the table. I like to work things my way, and this is how you have to function if you have to be in my team, right? So these will be bosses that you find sometimes. About 10% of the bosses are narcissistic, as per a US study that they did. So what do you do with these kind of bosses? If it is getting toxic, we'll talk about how to move out from there. But unless it is getting to that level of toxicity where you can't survive at all, try to find common ground. Maybe he or she is somebody who you can realize a common factor, like playing tennis. You might want to see where you can find a common ground. You may want to you probably might like something to eat together. You like barbecues together. So just find that common ground where you can work with him or her to build that relationship, because it will not happen in the workplace with these kind of bosses, because they are like, I am the boss, I'm God, this is my style, please work according to this. I don't care what you like, right? So these kind of bosses, you have to give kindness, you have to overload them with kindness, you have to showcase yourself, you have to always deliver, and always make sure that even if they are rude, you don't be rude in return. That's the only way to deal with these bosses. Workaholic. So I'm sure you will have realized there'll be some bosses who work on weekends. They'll send you emails late at night, 2 o'clock in the night, 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock in the night. They'll send you emails. They'll call you at random hours. They'll WhatsApp you these days. And then, there's no boundary at all, and these kind of bosses give you a lot of visibility, because since they are workaholic, they want you to work as well. I'm sure because they're workaholic, their bosses also realize that he's somebody who can deliver. But these kind of bosses create a lot of stress in our lives. You can't have a personal life. When you're watching a movie, you get a text or a call from a boss saying, I want this, I want that. So you build boundaries. You have to tell them that this is my personal time. Even if I check your emails, even if I check your messages, I will probably come back to you only on the next Monday. I know this is important to you, but I know that I can deliver it on a Monday, and I don't have to spend my weekend. So you have to build that boundary at the very start of that relationship. Sometimes undercommit and over-deliver is also important, right? So if you have like 10 things to do, you tell them that I can only do 8 things. So that way you're undercommitting. But in your heart that if you work harder, if you put your skill set to your best usage, you'll be able to deliver 10. So you're committing 8, but you're eventually delivering 10, which gets you that visibility. But if you commit to 10 and then you have something coming up in your personal lives, you have to be somewhere, there's an emergency and you can't do it, and you end up at 8, then you're losing credibility with your boss. with this kind of bosses specifically, who's a workaholic. He or she will say that, I don't care what's happening in your personal lives. Why is this work not done? So that way, it's good to undercommit and overdeliver. Share updates from time to time, and also introduce your personal life. So when you introduce your personal life, I typically, will introduce my husband, or if you have kids, you'll just say that, these are my kids, these are my family members, a mother, father, grandmother, whoever. So when you're introducing that, you're making yourself a human being. You're not just making yourself somebody who's a bot, working on the computers all the time. So when they know your kids' names, when they know your wife's name, your spouse's names, they'll realize that you are a human being, that you are a person who has a different personal life as well. So share that connection. If you don't share that connection, then he will always, he or she will always want you to be at work, because he won't realize that you have other responsibilities as well. Buzzwords. Another type of boss that we have is somebody who just says buzzwords like we want synergy, we want win-win, we want strategy, and all of that. Now, these kind of bosses, while they're very exuberant, you like to hear them out. They're good orators. But in this case, when they're all talking about buzzwords, you don't actually know what you have to do. So it is important that we ask for clarification, because otherwise, in a meeting like this, where they're only talking about win, 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 or some buzzwords like this, you won't know what to do. You won't know what he wants. So ask for clarification and specific questions. Okay, fine. I understand you want win-win, but what does win-win mean to you? What are the top 3 things that you would like to get established? What are the top 3 things that we should do in this month? So clarify expectations, set deadlines, and then only you can deal with these kinds of bosses and also succeed. And finally, we have this type of boss who is an impulsive or a yes man. So your boss reports into somebody, right? So if they say, can you do this? They will say yes. Can you do this? They will say yes. Can you do this? They'll say yes. I repeat it like that 3 times, right? Because these are 3 different elements that your bosses might say yes. If you worked as a software engineer, you might know this. Sometimes clients are also our bosses, right? So if a client says, can you change the color? Can you change this logic? Can you do this? Can you do that? And sometimes our bosses, because we want that business from the client, will always say yes. Okay, but what that means is the lower down the hierarchy people, developers and testers, will have to just work more and more to make sure that whatever you've said yes to is delivered. So these kind of bosses are very impulsive. Aaj yahan, kal wahan type of bosses, right? So they'll attend the conference and they'll come back and say, oh, I got an idea. Somebody said this, let's do this. Oh, this is something that's happening in a new organization. Why don't we do this? And you start working on it, and 10 years later he says, no, this is not important. Let's do something else. So these kind of bosses are, difficult to work with, and you have to again prioritize and ask them whether you like this. I was working on this, whether you want me to continue working on this. It will take so much time more, or you want me to drop this altogether and continue working or focusing on something else. So creating those prioritizations is very important with these kind of bosses. And these bosses will actually, there's a positive side as well. Because they are very impulsive, they might come or strike an idea which is very innovative, right? So suddenly something might strike him, and you might be a part of that process of doing something innovative. But overall, these kind of processes also create a lot of stress, because you have to switch gears from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to reverse sometimes, and you don't know what to do. So every day of the morning is something unique. You might, sleep and wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, I don't know what this day is going to look like, because my boss will come up with something else." Okay, so I take a pause here before we move into how of the topic, how to manage upwards. Let's see and hear about your experience. Okay, let me expand this panel. So folks, go ahead, talk to me. Or you've slept already. Yeah, was it something that you could relate to? Whoever's worked before, did you find your boss in one of these styles here?
So, ma'am, generally my boss had a very busy travel schedule planned. So, once a week, maybe he was in office. Rest of the days, because our work required for on-site visit.
Yeah.
So the day he was in office, it was like, okay, now everyone is spinning around and running around. So it was quite hectic. But yeah, like keeping in touch and meeting his expectations was very difficult. So in that aspect.
Okay. Yes,
Every time.
absolutely.
At
No,
night
there will be
also,
bosses like that. Definitely.
yeah. I remember at night also I was sitting with my laptop and doing stuff at my home. So
Yeah, that will happen, right? Sometimes, 11 o'clock there'll be an email and your boss is only there for a day. He would want results, right? So that can happen. Very nice. Anybody else wants to share your experience?
So my boss was a mix of like a micromanager and a workaholic. So I think
Okay.
it's a very,
You
like I
got the
said,
deadliest of the combination.
deadliest combination. He used to be all the time like when I really got frustrated, so I just started like working in the hours while he was at the workplace. So he used to come at the in at 11 o'clock, and he used to leave at 9ish in the night. So I used to maintain those hours with him there. Still, when I felt that he was not really happy with it, then I started
Okay.
getting really frustrated, and I talked to my like my colleagues and everybody. So everybody was facing the same issue, but later on,
Okay.
we had a great chat with him, so he then
Okay.
understood what was wrong.
So that's when you decided to do your MBA, quit and do your MBA, is it?
Kind of.
All right. No, I can relate to that actually because I was in a similar relationship with my boss. He was sort of I would not say micromanager, but workaholic. Yes, and I didn't want to. I did want to have a personal life, so I wanted to shut down at the end of the day and take a bit of time for myself. Anybody else want to share your experience?
Actually, Harsha, so I had two bosses over my very limited career, and my first boss was a workaholic, and he expected me to be a workaholic as well. And since
Yeah.
it was a sales profile, you can understand how much of workaholism actually qualifies as a workaholic in sales. So
Right.
there was a long period where I was working from like 10 a.m. in the morning to 10 a.m. at night, 10 p.m.
Right.
at night, and that was almost six days a week, sometimes even spilling over to the seventh day. So no Sundays available whatsoever. I did pick up the under commit and over achieve kind of thing, and after a couple of months, he did catch up to that and kind of started getting a bit annoyed at that. So I had to
Oh,
move out of that place at
change your
that point.
strategy accordingly.
Right, exactly. And later on, I actually worked for an advancer, which was one of the best experiences in my life, and like one of the things that made me pushed me into an MBA kind of thing, because I
Right.
wanted to bring about a change in the workplace on a general basis, because in our company my supervisor was an advancer while others were definitely either impulsive or yes men kind of thing. So I saw the change firsthand, like what is the difference that such a manager can make, right, in the team
Absolutely.
integration, the team loyalty, and also the performance. So that way I got pushed into an MBA just to
So you're
kind
gonna
of
be an
implement.
advancer boss when you come out, right?
That's the hope completely, yes.
Sure. Thank you, Raj. Thanks for sharing. Anybody else?
Ma'am, there's a question in the chat box. Should I read it out?
Yeah, please. I can't see the chat when I'm on the screen.
Yeah. So Vishnu is asking, some of the bosses don't like being questioned about the details. So how do you propose to handle them?
Sure. So if you don't, there'll be bosses who don't like to be questioned. So don't question them in team meetings, right? When you're with a team of say 10 people together, don't question them there because then they'll hate you forever. Then they'll, be frustrated and say, why this girl is pointing at me again and again and asking stupid questions? Because in his mind, it's a stupid question, right? So take out time, block a calendar of 15 minutes after the team meeting or before the team meeting to understand that point or to clarify that point or to give feedback to the bosses. Because they will appreciate that feedback if you're coming to them in a one-on-one basis. But if you give them that feedback in a team meeting, it'll just go in a very different and a wrong direction. I'll tell you one of my actually CEOs is somebody who's like that. He's very impulsive that way, and he will point out things that people might not like to hear. Coming from a sales background, some of you might realize that in the sales the culture is very different, right? They're like ये target खत्म नहीं हुआ तो क्यों नहीं हुआ, and then they also get into that abusive mindset or time frame. So you can't question them in team meetings because otherwise you're undermining their authority. But you can definitely give them feedback little later, or when you're going to lunch with them, or just find out if they like to play football or basketball together or tennis together. Just find that common ground where you can go and pitch in your idea, or elevator pitches. You might have heard of this, right? This is a good thing that you hear in MBA. So 60 seconds, find out time, just buzz into the elevator when he or she is also going into the elevator, and then give that feedback there or ask your question there. You have to find out these times. Sometimes it'll look like you're stalking him because you're trying to find out time when he's alone and you want to catch up with him. But it's okay. It's good to get your doubts clarified, because otherwise, anywhere. And sometimes your bosses are wrong also. We'll cover that in the subsequent slide. If they are wrong, it is important for us to speak up, but not speak up in an area where he or she will feel embarrassed. But speak up when he or she is in a good mood and say, okay, this is probably something that you might have missed. Do you think we could do this in a different way? So you have to portray and you have to change your statement like that instead of saying you are wrong. If you say you're wrong to the boss, of course he's in a better position than you, right? You can't do that. You have a risk of getting fired. So don't do that. But you can say that I know that this is something that we can also do. I know you're right, but so use that kind of statements where you're putting him on a pedestal first and then keeping your thoughts as well. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. I guess it does.
Sure. Somebody also had, but waiting would delay, and it went away. What was that, Shruta? Could you read out?
Yes, ma'am. So Harsh is asking, but waiting would also delay our task completion, no?
Like, it might. So I'm not saying wait, 2 months. Wait for the evening. Wait for a coffee. Every day you take coffee or lunches, right? You don't have to wait a longer time because your task will get delayed for sure. But wait for that 45 minutes duration of the team meeting and don't call him or her out during the team meeting. That's what I meant. So you can pick out your time when you think that the boss is at a good frame of mind. He or she has not, fought with anyone. The environment is positive, and then you take up or bring up that conversation. And many times your bosses will not give you time, right? If you see the calendars, if you worked with your bosses in the past, it's very difficult to get time. They will always have calendars which are chock-a-block, 11 to 12, 12 to 1, 1 to 2. So there's just no time. But sometimes you have to realize that their calls might get over sooner, right? They might have blocked their own times by themselves for lunch, because some bosses do that. This is a trick that you have to understand. They will block their entire calendar because they don't want to talk to stupid people, or they don't waste time on various things. So they want to keep some time to themselves. You have to figure out when is that time when he is actually looking busy, but he's not busy. So that is the time that you can, go and talk to him in face-to-face, in person, in his cabin, or just pick up the call and talk to him. That kind of thing takes time because you have to understand your boss first. It takes about 2-3 months to understand the relationship. But once you've done that, you will know that your bosses do this.
Thank you, ma'am. That's it, I guess.
Okay. All right. So let's move on, and we move into how piece of this, right? So how do you manage efforts? And there'll be various tips coming in. Shweta, do highlight whenever we are, about 10 minutes closer to the time that we stick to it.
Yes, ma'am, sure.
So first of all, very important is communication. So as soon as you join the organization, as soon as you realize that you have a reporting structure, you know who you're reporting to, observing and communication helps. Okay, let me minimize this. Sorry. So listening and observing helps, okay? So how do you listen and observe? You would want to understand what is the perfect style of your boss. Some bosses may be introvert, some bosses may be extrovert. Introvert bosses derive their energy sources from themselves, right? They would not want so much of social interactions. If you go back to them every 5 minutes, they'll be like, "Arey, yaar, ye banda pareshan kar raha hai." I'll use some of these in Hindi in between. I hope that's okay. But if it's not okay, just point me. So extrovert bosses are the other way around, right? They have these communication styles of, face-to-face talking. They want to go out, they want to have chai, they want to have sutta and all of that. So their communication style is very, very different. You want to show face to them. If you're not visible, then they don't even realize that you're there in the organization. You have to understand and adapt according to the style of your boss. What he likes, what are the work preferences, what he or she likes at work, or also in hobbies and passions, because that's where you can build that personal relationship. Work preferences, whether he wants a status update today, 1 week later, whether he wants you to, give them all the details or not, whether he wants you to give the big picture or not, whether he just wants you to complete the task and get him to it at the end of the day. So all that kind of work preferences you have to realize first and then only start delivering. What is he responsible for? Again, very important, because we don't know the big picture when you're talking to a boss, right? If, say, for example, I'm reporting to my HR head right now, he reports into the CFO of the organization. Now, I'm only responsible for a certain piece of HR, right? But he's responsible for everything else in HR. So if there's something that he's telling me not to do, there might be a reason behind it, because he feels that CFO might not approve it, or it might clash with other departments of the organization. He has to manage egos as well. He'll have to ensure that everybody feels their importance in the organization. So his perspective is different, because he's coming from a different space altogether. I'm not thinking that big picture. I want only my things to get done. So think of what he or she is responsible for, and then you will realize, how to work with them. What are the pressures he or she faces? And pressures are not just at workplaces, okay? Some people have very different pressures at home as well. Some people may have an ailing mother, ailing parent, or somebody who's going through a medical emergency, somebody who has twins or kids at home, and all the night they're shouting and asking for attention. So this boss doesn't get sleep at all. So that's why the pressure will come out, right? Wherever he or she is spending most of her time, and which is workplace. You spend most of your waking hours at your workplace. So think of the pressures he's facing, not just at home, but at workplace as well. Is his boss very difficult? Is his boss very demanding? So you have to think one level higher and understand what is the pressure that he is facing, because when there's pressure, it will get boiled down to the hierarchy as well. If you get shouted on, you might want to release that or vent out that frustration somewhere, right? If you get shouted out with your spouse, with your parents, when you talk to a friend, I'm sure that will come out somewhere. So what's happened with your bosses as well. What is the boss's style? So we saw in the previous slide, there are various styles a boss can apply, and you have to just figure out which is that style, that you can, work yourself, adapt yourself according to that style. How often would he want a status like that? Very simple thing. So if he doesn't want to see your face every day, then go back to him at the end of the week and show your face. Like, for example, Raj said that he had a boss who was traveling quite often. He was only available for that day or one day. So you obviously have to go and show your face, you have to give an update, to ask your questions only on that day, because otherwise you don't get your work done. What frightens him, drives him crazy? This is also a good point to understand, right? You can actually ask them this directly, or you can, observe various things on when is he getting mad, when are the things where he becomes frustrated, he'll become annoyed, etc. So you have to understand what drives him crazy. So if you know this, you're gonna stop doing things which drive them crazy. What can I do? So obviously, once you have done this listing, observing, communication, now then you have to showcase what can I do? How can I become dependable, right? What is it that I can do that makes him or her feel comfortable in his workspace? And let him or her have the right to his perspective, right? Because the position is important. So even though you may have arguments, even though you may have discussions, even though you may not like what your boss wants a lot of times, but just let him have his perspectives. Don't try to change his perspective. You can have your own perspective as well. You don't have to agree with him or her, but don't put so much foothold on your perspective and say, no, I am right. Doesn't matter, right? Sometimes you have to just let it go. You let him have his perspective, and then do things which work in the best interest of both of you. And finally, just think about putting yourself in their shoes for a bit. You put themselves in their shoes and just try to understand what keeps him up at night. If you do that, if you just pull yourself out of your body into somebody else's mind, then you realize that there are various different perspectives that will come to you. You will realize various pressures that he might have. You will realize that what he likes or dislikes is very different from what you were thinking. So just try this sometime. You have to put them in their shoes, think from their perspective, think from which space they're coming in from, and it will help you to become a better adaptable person at your workspace and manage different working bosses, because this is something that we can't change, right? Bosses, you really can't change. The only way to change your boss is either to give feedback. They might change it a little bit, but if it's too much, you'll just have to quit, right? Because that's the only way around it. So if you do that, you can make your lives easier when you're at your workplace. Okay, so let's move on. And how do you be dependable? I'm talking about being dependable for a long time. So how do you become dependable? I had a boss in Infosys where this person was also an extrovert, and she had a team of about 6 people to work with, and a lot of things. She was an extrovert. She wanted to take on various things on herself. She was also impulsive, like a yes person. So she would say, "I want to do this," because she also wanted to grow in the organization. So the only way to grow in the organization is to take more on your plate, right? You will say, I'll do this." If her bosses would say, "Who can do this?" She will say, "I'll do it." So if she'll say, "I'll do it," then of course her team has to work more as well because she's taken on more on her plate. So how do you relate to that? You become that go-to person for this boss. So my boss, I became the go-to person. How? Because I understood that she wants to grow, and I sort of had the same thought as well. Some of you on the very first 90-meter slide said that for growth you have to do this. If you want to earn money, you have to do this, right? So if you have the same thoughts, if your boss grows, you grow, right? So you have to become that go-to person. Sometimes you'll have to stretch because you have to, if she's taken more on her plate, she will also want to delegate that and give it to somebody. So take more on your plate sometimes. It's okay. And at the start of your careers, you don't have so much responsibility at home than otherwise. It's okay to stretch a little bit. Then build a strong relationship at the start. You have to understand how do they like their work to be delivered. So if I deliver my work and my boss has to rework on it and then present it to the board, then obviously you're not a person that she can depend on, right? Because she'll have to rework again, she'll have to do this again. So understand what your boss's boss wants, and if you can deliver it right, then because if they don't have to spend a lot of time reviewing your work, then you are the go-to person because he or she will depend on you. He or she knows that you will deliver what they want, and you don't have to spend so much time reviewing it. Then help them visualize. Because if you're just talking about I'll do this, I'll do that, it's all in the cloud, right? So don't make it in the cloud. Create a presentation. You tell them I've done this, I can do this. So if you do that, you're helping them visualize your capabilities. If you've done a certification, put that somewhere. If you have done a project, if you have done something extra in your personal life, showcase that. Take pictures, showcase that. If you help them visualize that, this is what you're capable of doing, then they will also depend on you. Because otherwise, they have no way of knowing whether you will be able to succeed if they give you a job or not. Frame your language as per his or her priorities. So I'll give you another example here. One of my colleagues, I was in Croatia at that time, and one of my colleagues has recently joined the organization. Okay, so she manages to read all her emails one by one, and there's an email from CEO coming in. Typically, wherever you worked in the organization, CEOs from time to time, the CXO leadership level, they send these big long emails, right? At the end of the quarter, at the end of the year, just to motivate people, just to give status of the entire organization. They give these emails to all the people, like a keynote address coming in from leadership. Now that email is important for sure because you want to understand your leadership's priority. But is that email important at the very point of time? No. You're doing something. Your immediate boss wants you to submit an Excel sheet. If you leave that task and start reading the CEO's email at that point of time, you're actually not giving priority. You're not setting your priorities correctly. Of course, it is important. Your CEO's email is important, but it's going to stay in your inbox. So you can possibly park it and read it at a later time. But if your boss is asking for an Excel sheet in the next 10 minutes and you're delayed on that, you're not going anywhere, right? Because you don't have to build credibility with your CEO. You have to build credibility with your immediate boss. So that kind of priority is very important. You have to understand and give importance to your immediate boss rather than your super seniors. Because you can't go running around CEOs every day. You have to run around your immediate boss. And you have to understand that if you make him look good, then you're looking good as well. Because he will understand or she'll understand that this is what you have done, you've delivered, you've made me look good. So next time if there's a promotion opportunity, I will pick you up, right? Our power comes from our adaptability. So I've been saying this in the last couple of slides. There will be bosses with different working styles. At a lot of times, you can't change them. You have to work from your sphere of influence. You have to see what is it that you can control, and what you can control is your adaptability. You can't control management styles of different people, but you can control your adaptability to a different management style. showcase. So these are some of the pointers, some of the tips that you can use to be visible at workplaces. If you see these pictures on the right, somebody who's putting up the hand and say, I'll do it. If you do that, you are showcasing yourself as somebody who's willing to do more. If you're in a fast group, all of you will have your fast groups at work. You will obviously have natural leaders, right? Somebody who's good at presentation, somebody who's good at oration, and they will say, okay, you guys develop that presentation, I will present it in front of professors. But natural leaders are there. But even if you're not natural leader, sometimes just put up your hand and say, fine, I'll do it. Okay, or I'll do this presentation, I'll do this assignment. If you do that, then you're making yourself visible, then you're stepping out of your comfort zone and you're getting to learn something new. Speed dating is another one of good concepts to become visible. If you're in a conference, if you go to a meeting, if you're at lunch, why don't you take lunch with different people, right? Don't just take lunch with your fast group or your group that you like to go out with, because that's where you're limiting yourself. You're not getting different perspectives. You're not building in your network. So go out with lunch with different people. Even at offices, go out with chai with different people. If you're going out to lunch, go out with different people. If you're smoking, go out with different people. I don't want to, want you to say that you take up smoke, but if you do, then this could be one of the ways to network as well. Try for something new. So, change is inevitable. Somebody said that, I think some of you mentioned that change will be there wherever you're working. But if change is coming to you, you can't avoid that change. There's nothing you can do about it. You just have to adopt yourself. But if you ask for a change, then you're setting your trajectory in a way that you want it, right? Sometimes you get bored with your work. If you're bored with your work, don't wait for your bosses to come and catch you up and say that, you do something else. Why don't you go to your bosses and say, I want to do something else? Or I'm bored with HR, I want to do something else. Or not just HR, I would say I'm bored with employee engagement, I want to do training and development. So if you put up your hand and if you ask for change, there might be a position coming in the near future that you don't know about. You might say that I want to work on site. I want to go to Germany. I want to go to US. So if you put that thought in your boss's head, then eventually when there's an opportunity, he or she might think of you. If you don't even come up and say that this is what I want, you'll not get it. Please understand that there are thousands of people and one on-site opportunity, right? All of you will have that, most of you will have that ambition to go out abroad. Please understand the on-site opportunities are very, very limited. So you have to put up your hands, you have to show you're dependable, you have to showcase your visibility, but also put it in your boss's head that this is what I want, this is what I want, this is what I want. If you, every quarter when you're doing that feedback meeting, put up your hand and say, this is what I want. So eventually they'll realize that, when there is an opportunity, they'll sort of promote you or they'll put you up for a new position. Okay. On the right hand side, there are a couple of more things. They're very simple tips. When you go to conferences, etc., put your name tags here. Now, you're talking to 250 different individuals in your batch right now, right? When you're going to an organization, more people will be coming in from different colleges. So it's a good opportunity for you to make sure that the other people remember your name. And they will do that only when you personalize yourself. It's very difficult to remember Harsha or Raj or, Walter White or somebody else. But if you make yourself personalizable, I just say that, I've come from Mumbai and I took a lot of time to travel and I met with an accident or I have 2 kids at home, whatever, just pin a story to your name and then they'll remember that story. They might not remember you or your face or your name, but they'll remember somebody saying, oh, I met a cow in the street as I was walking through and I met with an accident. So this is something that they'll remember. Or when they come across a similar experience, they might say, oh, I think I've heard this before somewhere. This is like a deja vu. So spin your stories. And along with your name, you have to also give them something to remember you by. You can just say, hi, I'm Harsha. I was at a tennis practice right now. And, I just got from tennis practice. Sorry, I got delayed because of that. Or I just met with this beautiful gentleman or, beautiful women while coming at work. And this is what. So you are actually giving them something to remember you by and not just your names, because names are something very difficult to remember at workplace. There's one myth at the very last point here. People will eventually see your work if you just perform. So some of us may feel that, I'm performing, I don't need to showcase. What's the big deal? I've done my work, my boss will eventually see it. That doesn't happen at workplace at all. If you don't showcase, they will not realize you've done it. Somebody else will take that credit for sure. So, take credit, showcase. If you've done something, put up pictures, put up a big email in front of your boss, a boss's boss, and all the stakeholders, and say that I have done this. If you don't blow your trumpet, somebody else will blow it for you and take that credit. So please make sure that you are marketing yourself as in and possible. And here, I'm not saying that you have to do something crazy. Don't market where you don't have the capability. Don't fudge your resume. This is not what I'm talking about. But if you've done something, that needs to be showcased. That visibility needs to happen in the organization. Now, be a silent shock absorber. This is, I'm sure you would have realized this. Gusta kahin to niklega, right? So if your boss is not happy with you, if your boss is shouting on you, if your boss is sort of irritated or agitated, you have to just realize, take a step back and understand why is he frustrated or where is he coming from, what is the mental space he or she is in. So if you've had a fight at home, it will come out in the workplace, right? Whether you like it or not, however professional you are, it will be visible on your face. If you've had a setback, if you've heard some bad news at your home, and then you have to still work for that 9 hours a day, you will obviously be in a foul mood. And if somebody irritates you at that point, gussa kahin nikal hi jayega. So just have to try and gain insight into that background. Remain calm and don't abuse. Don't let it affect you. If bosses are abusing you, especially happens in sales teams, don't abuse back, because that's not going to lead you anywhere. Just take a step back, say I'm going to take a walk, or you can just tell your boss, take a walk, take a hike. This is fine, but don't say take abusive words and say screw you or something like that. That doesn't work well at all. Even if you're right, even if your boss is wrong, if you say something like this, you are digging your own grave into that organization for sure, because that is something that your boss will remember, and it will hurt you when you actually need it. Right? It's not in that moment, but when there's a position coming up, when there's a promotion coming up, when there's increment to be given, your boss will remember that one word that you've spoken out of line or out of context, or some sort of abusive word, and he or she may not want to promote you just for that simple reason. So don't let it affect you. Take a step back and try and gain insight into the backgrounds. That way, you just have to be a silent shock absorber from time to time. Wrong or right, position is always right. Are you guys still with me? Can you just, can I see some show of hands or just somebody saying something?
Yes, ma'am, we are with you.
Yes,
Oh,
we.
yes, awesome. So wrong or right, position is always right, right? Because they are in a higher position, bosses are your bosses for a reason, right? They are in a higher position, in a higher hierarchy. So avoid confrontation. Like I said in the previous slide as well, you are right, but somebody was asking this question. How do we say that your boss is wrong, or how do I tell him that you're not right and there's a better way to do it? So you can't say you're not right. So the rule one is boss is always right. You have to remember this because of their position. I'm not saying because of the person, but because of the position, they're always right. And rule number two, if you see the boss is wrong, see rule number one. So you have to always remember the position is always right. So how do you approach a person like that? If you see a photo right here, you see this horse and this young lady, right? How do you, if a horse is very agitated, if a horse is like a pagal horse, and it's not allowing you to sit on him and then ride him, what do? Any thoughts, any comments? What is she doing here?
Just try to build a rapport. That's, I think, what she's doing there. Like, calm him down, make the animal or the person comfortable with you being there or saying that. For example, like putting it to an office context, don't just say, okay, we need to implement this 20-step plan. Just say, maybe we can do this one thing. Then after the next time you add 2 or 3 things, and then eventually you get to a point where they would actually consider your 20-step plan.
Absolutely. Bang on point, Raj. So, what is she doing here? She's calming the animal, right? Because the wild horses are very difficult to climb on. You can't ride them, they will make you fall eventually. So, wild horses, I'm just comparing it with boss. I'm not saying your boss is a horse, it's just a comparison, metaphorical comparison here. Tell him or her what he wants to hear first, right? You have to build that rapport, very correctly said. You have to build that relationship. You figure out what he wants to hear. If he wants to hear that he's right, you say that he's right. If he wants to hear, yes, we will do it, you say that yes, we will do it, but there are certain constraints. The deadline cannot be met. We need these resources in hand, and only then I'll be able to deliver it. But if you just say no right away, right? No, this is not possible. I can't do this. This is ridiculous. This is unexpected deadline. All of that. Then what he's hearing is no, no, no. He's not hearing your constraints, right? He's only hearing no. So you tell him what he wants to hear first, and then bring up your perspective. That's the way to avoid confrontation. That's the way to prove your bosses that you have a point which works. You have a perspective that is more important to be taken into account right now. You have constraints, you need resources, and then ask your bosses for help, right? If you tell them right away that I can't do this, I won't do this, I don't have time, I won't work weekends, all that he's hearing is no, no, no. Even if you tell them that I don't want to work this weekend, just say I'm okay to work this weekend, but I have certain commitments. I've already committed to going to my wife's place, or going to a shelter that I'm volunteering, and I don't want to look bad in front of them and all of that. So you're saying yes, but you're also putting in your constraints. Right? That way, he'll hear that yes, you want to do it, but there's a problem. Okay, moving on. So being right without being out of order. Sometimes bosses make mistakes also. They may not be right, but you can't point them out in a team meeting and say, no, hey, you're not right. Because otherwise you're hurting his ego or her ego, right? And every one of us has an ego. Whether it's a small ego or a big ego, every one of us has an ego. So give your time, give time to your bosses to realize mistakes. One of the very simple examples I'll give you here is in my workplace, as an internal communications lead, we have to sort of publish status updates from time to time. So what we did as an HR team in 2020, we wanted to publish that. So I created a big infographic about what we did from all the departments, all the highlights of the 2020 year, and we had to publish it. Now I gave it to my boss, and he said, I'll review it. I gave him a couple of reminders, and then he said, he didn't come back to me. We sort of missed the deadline, missed the boat on sending this infographic on. I've created it. The management is expecting it, but my boss forgot about it. Maybe he had different things on his mind. He had a lot on his plate, but he forgot about it. So in that case, I have reminded him twice, right? I have done my bit. I have done the presentation. I've reminded him twice. I've also let him know that this was important to be sent out before this date. Then eventually on a chat somewhere, I just put in and said that, this is something that is missed. Oh, then he realizes and then he says that, okay, Shweta says we've overshot the time by 10 minutes. Okay, all right. So we'll move quickly. Shweta, I'll take 5 more minutes to cover the presentation, and then we'll get into question answers. Does that work?
Yes, ma'am. No worries.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have a session after this, or you just have to take personal time?
No, ma'am. But the meeting will end in some time, so that's why.
Okay. I understand. Show respect to your bosses, because you have given your perspective. In this example, I've told him, I've given him the respect that he take his time to review that thing, and time it right. So I will not tell him, very same day that you've forgotten about this, but in another conversation, in another chat, I'll just tell him that, boss, probably you've, lost this, or you might have not realized that this is in your plate, this is lying in your email, and you've missed out on this. So that way, it is easier for him to realize his mistake as well. And he came back and said that, oh, sorry, I didn't think that this was in my drafts, or I didn't realize that it was with me to release it, but I didn't release it. So you're not hurting his ego, but you're also making him realize the mistakes, right? Moving on. First, obey, then protest. Another one of the tips that I wanted to bring in here. Choose your words very carefully. Don't say anything that you'll regret later. Like the example that I give you. Don't say screw you, or go to hell, or whatever. Don't say that, because you'll regret it later. Don't put it on the social media, because sometimes we take out our frustrations on social media. It's a very small world. Even if you quit your jobs, you may work with somebody who he has worked with in the near future. These teams like sales or HR or marketing, these teams are very, very small in India, right? You will work with certain individuals when you realize that this person is actually worked with your boss. So it's a very small world altogether. But have courage to speak as well. If you think that you're right, given this example, see, aviation industry, safety depends on good communication, right? So if you're a small-time engineer in an aviation industry, and if your pilot is doing something wrong, if you don't speak up just because he's your boss, will that help? No, right? Because that will result in, lives of all the people. That could result in a disaster. So you have to speak up, especially when you're in industries like this, where it is very important that even minutest of the mistakes are caught, and you have to take corrective action. So even if you are, down in the hierarchy, even if you're on the last ladder of the hierarchy, if you think that something is very wrong, you should have the courage to speak. And silence is not always golden. Okay, so people say that silence is golden, not in all situations. Choose when to fight. Another example I'll give you here. My father is actually was working in as a marketing consultant in insurance industry. And sometimes when he used to take travels, a lot of times he used to travel here and there, and he has to claim those expenses, right? So at one point of time, he claimed rupees 30, a long time back. Rupees 30 is nothing these days, but he did claim this for certain things he had expensed on. And his boss actually declined it for some reason. He said that it's not correct. But my father was correct in this point. He had spent it. He had a receipt in his hand. It was a legitimate claim according to the policy, but his boss wouldn't approve it. So he went ahead and spoke to his boss's boss, right? And what that did was just spoil the relationship with this immediate boss. Because just for rupees 30, you've ensured that you've spoiled the relationship with your boss. And for the next 3 months, his boss wouldn't give him any trips at all. He wouldn't want him to take up any travel at all. So eventually, he was at a loss, right? So you have to pick your battles. You can't fight every time. Sometimes you have to just let go. You have to evaluate personal and professional impact before you engage with your boss. If you think that fighting at this point will get you somewhere, then go ahead and fight it. But if you think that this is going to actually be detrimental to me in the long run, or this is something that doesn't really matter at all, 30 rupees won't matter at all, right? So just let it go. Sometimes you have to pick your battles, and you have to let go wherever it is not in your personal professional advancement. Understand generational differences as well. So I'm sure when you join your organizations, there'll be a lot of people from different generations. There'll be generation X, Y, Z, Alpha. I don't even know so many generations are there, but there are there. Right? So you'll have some of the bosses who are age 70 plus, some of them 51 to 69, and so on and so forth. Everyone brings a different perspective to the table. And since you guys are doing MBA now, you guys are all probably generation G's guys. So you guys know things that your bosses may not. So take up that time to do reverse mentoring. There will be some of you who are very digitally savvy. You are Instagram, you are social media specialist and all that. Your bosses might not be. So if you want to do an employer branding, for example, and you know a better way to do it, then you have to explain to your bosses this is a way to do it. You have to also tell them that technology is useful. But if you just tell them this is useful, they will have their own constraints, right? Because they've grown up in certain way. They have not seen technology like we have done it, or like you guys have done it. So you have to also sometimes take up reverse mentoring. This is one of the ways to engage with your managers and to build relationships. If you know something better, teach him or her. Take the time to explain to them that this is the way to do it. This is the way we can make things much better. Why don't we go digital? Why don't we use social media? So there'll be a lot of things that you can explain to your bosses as well. So take the time, understand the different generation perspectives, and bring something unique to the table. Okay. Office politics. We're at the very last of the slide, but this is important, right? All of us face office politics from time to time. There will be gossip going on. People will have their own cliques, and your CEO might prefer a certain individual. They might not prefer you. All of this goes on. Avoid loose talks in these cases. Diplomacy is not just for HR. Okay, so you might feel that HRs have to be diplomatic because of their profession. Yes, but every one of us has to be diplomatic, not just HRs. You can't talk to them when they're in a bad mood. You can't say bad words. You have to ensure that you're putting your point across in a diplomatic way. You're not putting your CEO down or your boss down. Don't discuss your boss with your co-workers. Very important. Even if your co-workers are very friendly with you, they are your best of the friends, don't discuss your boss with them. Because eventually there will be a point of time where this will become a point of gossip. And sometimes we don't even realize if we have shared a secret with a friend, but that friend, shares it with somebody else just as lightly. He or she might not realize that this was a secret, right? So don't discuss your boss with your coworkers ever, and be cued in. So if you want to survive office politics, even if you don't want to do gossip, even if you don't want to do politics, you have to understand how the office politics work. You have to understand why this person is more important. You have to understand why this person gets more visibility. So if you're cued in, then you can change your perspectives a little bit, you can change your adaptability a little bit, and be more visible and make this politics in your favor. Because office politics is not going away. But if you are not even aware of what is going on in the organization, you will not succeed. So there will be times when there's a lot of toxicity, right? How to save yourself from toxic environments? You have to have a survivor mentality. You can't let it get to you. Don't take it personally at all. You have to have a support network. Somebody who's in your network, a friend or a colleague who will say, "छोड़ यार जाने दे, मतलब आज के लिए छोड़ दे, चल कहीं घूम के आते हैं," and all of that. So you need that network to vent out also. You need a network to support you. Sometimes your bosses are very toxic, so you can keep your distance. When he's going to, take the stairs, you take the lift down, right? You don't have to talk to them every time. You don't have to see their face every time, because sometimes if you just keep your distance, it helps you keep your peace of mind. And plan your exit if it doesn't work out for you at all. So this is the last bit that I'm going to leave you with. Leave on a positive note. Sometimes some relationships don't work. Sometimes some presentations don't work. Some bosses don't work. It doesn't have to be. So you've put in your best effort. Even then, this organization is not working out for you, which is okay. So you start thinking ahead. You start planning ahead. You start looking for jobs, and then leave on a positive note. Even if you've had a tough relationship with your boss, give proper notice. Give transition time. Make sure that whoever's coming in place of you has all the tools that he or she needs to succeed, and don't burn bridges. Like I said, it's a very small world. You may end up giving interviews to your to somebody who you know, who your boss knows. For example, I gave an interview very recently in a banking organization, and then he says that, "Have you worked with Chris Shankar? He was my boss in Infosys." He said, "Yes, I've worked with him. How do you know him?" So he said, "Chris Shankar was my boss as well in another organization." See, this type of things might happen. If I've burned bridges in the past, then he already knows that I'm coming in with a background. I'm coming in with a bad background, right? So don't burn bridges, and especially in the MBA worlds like these, it's a very, very small world. You may get to end up working with the same person or a person who's worked with your boss in previous organizations or somewhere. And you see this movie scene. I'm sure you've seen this. This is a great happy scene from DDLJ. Where these guys had a lot of parents were not happy with their relationship at all, but eventually they ended up having a happy ending. So discussion should always have a happy end, like Indian films. That's the only way to close a discussion, to close your relationship with an organization, close your relationship with the boss. Just put it on a happy note. Even if you don't like him, just put it on a happy note so that doesn't come to bite you in the future. Okay, so that was all I had to present. This is a secret that all of us should be aware about. You have to manage upwards. You have to manage your boss's style, but you have to not let them know about this, right? You don't have to tell them that I'm managing you. You have to just keep it as a secret. Okay? Any questions, stories, anything that you want to share, please feel free to start talking.
You all can unmute yourself and speak up. I actually
feedback you have. Sure, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, Muskan.
Yeah, ma'am, actually, a friend of mine recently faced a situation wherein her boss always looked down on her and kept passing snide comments like time and again. And the deliverables that were supposed to be given were not very clear, but the boss always kept passing on snide comments. So how do we deal with those situations?
So there are two questions here, Muskan. One, the deliverables are not clear, right? So this is something that is part of your job. So you have to make sure that you understand the deliverables, or whoever that friend was. If you don't have clarity on deliverables, however good you are at your work, it will not work in your favors, right? Because at the end of it, business is important. If you don't deliver on your business, the job, then of course, you're beautiful, you're handsome, you're arriving on time, you're staying in the office for 10 hours a day, you're visible in front of your bosses. Nothing will work if your deliverables are not there. So take clarity on the deliverable. If you don't understand anything, take help from mentors, right? You don't have to go to your bosses, but there might be somebody who's like a mentor in the team who has been there in the organization for longer than you are, right? So they would understand office politics, or they would understand what is the best way to take up your deliverable and come back at it. So that's one piece of your question. The other is snide comments, right? So obviously this is a very difficult boss to live with, because he or she is probably a narcissistic person who doesn't care about others, or is probably not a good attitude, I would say. So don't, because if you take it lying down, it just becomes bullying. Okay, you can't let the bullying happen in the workplace for too long, because it's only the one who's a bully, he doesn't lose anything, right? Because if you don't give him feedback, he'll not lose anything. He'll continue the ways as he has been brought up like that. So sometimes you have to give feedback directly. You have to find out a time where he's alone or where he's in a good mood, and then give that feedback directly, that this is something that I don't like. Okay, you are saying these comments, it doesn't work well with me. I don't think you should use these comments in a professional environment. If you have a feedback, if you have a problem with me, please tell me so that I can improve upon. So you're also, accepting feedback here. You're not just giving him feedback saying you are wrong, but you're also putting in a line there saying that if you think that I'm doing something wrong, please give me feedback and I'll try to improve upon. But I would like you, or I would request you not to use these comments, because this doesn't make me happy in this workplace, and I won't be able to survive now. Right? So that kind of feedback you have to give. If all of this doesn't work, you go to boss's boss. It's okay to escalate sometimes, but don't make it complete, like an escalation where you're saying this boss is completely wrong, right? You just have to focus on the situation. You don't say the person is wrong, because that boss might have a relationship with the CEO or whoever his boss is, right? He might not like escalated. So you tell them that this is a situation. These sort of comments have to stop. This is creating disharmony in the team. This is something that is not helping us succeed. I don't have any problems with the boss as a person, but these kind of comments have to stop. So escalate. That way you can put your situation in focus and not the person in focus. Does that make sense?
Sure, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
What else?
Ma'am, I have a question actually. Sometimes in a team, your boss would always prefer your colleague rather than you, in spite of you working in and giving your best. But again, like due to some relation, like he or she will always prefer them over something. So how do you go forward with that?
So realize that if they're preferring something else, there is a background to it, right? Why do they prefer somebody else? If you just figure that out, maybe they're in a smoke group together and you don't smoke, so that's where you're losing out on the network, right? I've lost so many of my networks because of this. Sometimes you have to figure out that they are playing football together at the end of the day, so they have that time to build another relationship. So why don't you stick around and play football? Even if you don't like it, stick around. There are table tennis tables in the office, right? Just figure out why the boss prefers the other person over you. Are you not visible in the organization? Or he or she, the other person, is doing something extra? I'm sure they are. So personal relationships, you can't really get around to it, right? If they are bhaichara is there, or if you can't smoke, then of course you're not going to do that. But if there's something that you're missing out and the other person is doing it, just try and get into that space. Okay. So that will help you build that relationship as well. But at the end of it, if you think that even after whatever you've done, even after showcasing yourself properly, even after finding those times to connect informally, this is not working out, then it's probably something that you should think about and plan your way ahead. So I'm saying that you can plan to a next role, you can plan to a new boss, you can plan to a new organizations, because if it is not giving you peace of mind day in and day out, and every morning on a Monday, or every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you're just thinking that you're dreading yourself to get back to workplace, then that's not a workplace to go to. Because you can survive that only for say 6 months. After that, you'll be tired, you'll be frustrated. So start thinking about quitting. Because not all relationships are meant to be. But unless you've given your complete 100%, 110%, unless you've figured out how to make yourself visible, unless you've found out those informal connect opportunities, don't take that step.
Got it, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Anybody else? Any stories you want to share? Anything you could relate to within the presentation? Okay. All right. So back to you guys. Host, thank you so much for having me here. I hope this was mildly useful, and I hope you all have a good boss in wherever organization that you're joining in. And even if they are tough bosses, you'll know what to do.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you once again for taking some time out on a Sunday morning. It was an amazing and insightful session for everyone present here. And I hope you enjoyed the session too. Thank you once again. And I now request Aishwarya to propose a vote of thanks. Aishwarya, please.
Good afternoon, ma'am. On behalf of the Alumni Relations Committee of TAPME and LIME, I'd like to thank you for taking time out this morning to share your wonderful insights on managing upwards as an employee. If I can quickly summarize, after getting to know you a little better, we discussed why managing upwards is important, the different types of managers and leaders that one can have, and their styles of management. Then you spoke about how one can actually manage upwards, the importance of communication and observing the styles, preferences, and pressures that the bosses might have, and how one can adapt accordingly and become dependable. You spoke about how and why individuals should showcase themselves in an organization and the importance of being a silent shock absorber by understanding the position where bosses are coming from and how to put across perspectives while avoiding confrontation. The importance of picking your battles after assessing their importance was also discussed by you. You threw some light on navigating through generational differences and handling office politics. You concluded with how one can manage their relationships while exiting the organization. Thank you very much, ma'am, and we hope to interact with you again in the future. I'd also like to thank the management of TAPME and Professor Vasant Kamath for giving us an opportunity to interact with Harsha, ma'am. Last but not the least, thank you to all the students who are present on the call today. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is my coordinates in terms of email and LinkedIn. So if you would like to stay connected or talk on any other things, I'm happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everyone.